story. This was, of course, earlier on this year when Jim Ratcliffe, he's Gordon knighted for his services to whatever he does, the owner of Ineos, who produce chemicals and so on, 4.2 billion they want to try and buy out Chelsea for. Of course, that was rejected out of hand. The next situation, of course, now he is looking to buy Manchester United, and there has been some pushback from some parts of the media. Can I start with you on this? From what we know of this guy, his business practices have been fairly suspect at times. In this, absolutely brilliant. I mean, I can't say it's not a takedown piece. It was very, very good by Andy Dunn. And as he said, that this is a man who once threatened to shut down a Scottish petrochemicals plant. He's going to put out over 1,000 jobs at risk unless the trade union agreed to job cuts, a wage freeze, harsher redundancy terms, and a scrapping of a final salary pension scheme. That was one thing. He's very like a Mr. Robert Maxwell. You can Google that, folks. Keane, is this the kind of guy that Manchester United, the fans, are going to be singing for?
They probably will if the finances are the right way and things can improve, because as we've probably noticed, supporters and morality at the moment don't knit together. Not the whole lot. I'm sure a certain amount of all of the different clubs that have been taken over in recent years, there's a little bit of morality, but it's very, very difficult at the moment. I don't think, even though what you've said there is extremely difficult to hear, I don't think if he was to take the club over from the Glazers, I don't think the supporters would be too upset. I think they'd be just overly concerned with the football side of things.
So would you agree on that? Because you, I didn't see it, but in our private chat, you put it about the house of Maxwell and Maxwell, because immediately, as soon as I saw that, I have no time for the man whatsoever. He's been involved in so many dirty things. He's a good businessman, of course. He is a very good businessman. He gets some strange kind of investors, but I wouldn't want him next in your club.
To me, it's one of these things where, the way and obviously his investing across sports has been quite prolific in terms of what he has done. Ineos are obviously synonymous with a number of sports, and more recently we've seen them cropping up on the rugby fields of the Southern Hemisphere, and obviously with cycling. But it's almost a case of, I want to own a football club. The one I want to own was probably Chelsea, because that's the one you went for first, or it was just the one that was for sale, because he's since said, I think, that he's a Man United fan. But it's a case of, you want to own a football club. Great. Ryan Reynolds bought one further down the league. Maybe start there and work up. Don't start with a team that are in disarray and that have that huge profile. But obviously, if you're that kind of person, it reminds me of the dynamic. The reason I said Maxwell, the dynamic between Robert Maxwell and Rupert Murdoch, where someone wants to get something and they don't care about the actual needs that club has. Man United fans will welcome anyone with open arms. I'd say Steve Ashley, if he was to rock up right now, they'd be like, come on in, Steve, we'll take you in. Welcome to Sports Direct.
Mike Ashley,
sorry. Yeah.
Well, you might as well call him Steve, because they call him an awful lot worse up in Newcastle.
My mind is distracted with it, but it is. There is also the fear is, like, if United don't sell, if the Glazers stay involved and just decide to get some cash in elsewhere, what position? Like, United fans saying we're going to have demands of the new owners. No, you're not. No, you're not.
Well, I don't think anybody can ignore the headlines. And it's made a very, very interesting narrative already since Friday's soft deadline from the sellers, Reigns, who arranged the sale of Chelsea as well. Now, Jim Ratcliffe is selling himself as, I want to put the Manchester back into Manchester United. Now, the points that the guys raised a few months ago, last summer, go into far deeper detail than most papers have covered this time round. Jim Ratcliffe from the Manchester area, he's English, even though he doesn't live in England anymore. Now, that is going to appeal to most of them, simply because, we'll start with the Glazers before we come on to the rival Qatari bid. The Glazers are so wildly unpopular, partly because they simply do not care about the football. They've been taking dividends out at extortionate rates every single year until this year. There's a split even within the Glazer family themselves. They've not reinvested in the stadium. The stadium is in a dire state of disrepair. The roof is leaking in places. It's appalling. The training facilities, this is the biggest, arguably the biggest brand, the biggest club in the world, one of them at least. Training facilities falling down. What have the Glazers done for it? Very little. So to get an American out and get an Englishman in, just that alone will appeal to supporters. However, we're all focusing on the wrong detail at this point. It doesn't matter what appeals to the fans. It matters what appeals to the sellers. The Glazers want the most money they can possibly get. Now, already, Jim Ratcliffe's Ineos bid has said we are bidding for a majority stake, which is the Glazer stakeholding, which will give them a controlling interest in the club. But it's not the most amount of money the Glazers can get. The Qataris have endless, and by Qataris, we should be clear that it is not the Qatari state. It is an independent Sheikh Jassim, who just so happens to be a relative of a former prime minister of Qatar, but we'll brush over that point. The popularity stakes for the fans is a no-brainer. Jim Ratcliffe is who the fans want because he's making the right noises. However, at what point do we draw the line between what fans want and what actually is good for the club? The moral aspect of Qatar. Qatar's name has been dragged through the mud, and some would say, from a country's point of view, absolutely rightly, the human rights issues are a huge, huge issue. However, Jim Ratcliffe's history is not squeaky clean either. So, well, when you say it's a moral decision, well, where do your morals stand? In essence, we could dig the dirt up on any owner at virtually any club and say, well, how can you defend their actions? So where do we stand? Well, we don't know how much the bids have been made yet stand for. The Glazers want about $8 billion. I don't think they're quite going to get that. But they will be up there with one of the biggest bids ever for ownership of a football club, if not the biggest. And I think we all know where the deeper pockets lie there. The Qatari bid is far stronger on that front. There is conflicting interests, we can say. We know Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos have stakes in football clubs in France, in Switzerland, cycling, sailing, and his pockets aren't living. Formula One, of course, absolutely. So there's two separate issues here for me. There's what would be better for Manchester United. Forget the moral issue. I think the Qatari bid, if we're being brutally honest, from a business perspective, would be better for the club. They want to invest because it is good for their image. It is sports washing. There's no point trying to skip around it. It is sports washing. The question is, how comfortable are you with sports washing if it does, for your club, benefit the outcome, the long-term sustainability? And there's no question for me that the Qatari bid would be more successful. However, it isn't the only issue. I would feel more comfortable with Jim Ratcliffe simply because the headlines would then be, now it's Abu Dhabi versus Qatar. And I don't want that. It will be a distraction.
I'll say this out straight, and seeing some of the commentary, for example, from one Daily Mail or Sunday Mail writer, this is a lot about, the sports washing is fine just depending on the color of your skin and your religion. And this is very much going into it because Jim Ratcliffe, of course, he pulled up sticks and went down to Monaco. He's living there, so he can save, I think, £1 billion a year or more than £1 billion a year pounds in tax. And they've already, as Andrew rightly mentioned, they've gone after the Qatari guy. They haven't touched Ratcliffe, despite so many in sport. Basically, this is the same as you're running a children's home and inviting Jimmy Savile over. This is, I'm being very brutal, but this is what you're getting yourself into. You do not want this person next to near your club, and it's nothing to do with money, because his money is as dirty as anybody else, but his practices and what he does. Yeah, fine, we've got the kafas.
What's the intention It's what's the intention behind the bid that you have to ask, I think. I mean,
for him,
the
I can tell
coverage.
you, it's basically to move money through the club, and I can guarantee you, if he's in there within 5 years, Old Trafford's gone. So this is what he does. He has no compunction about it. He's not a Manchester United fan. He's never been a Manchester United fan. Trust me on that. Issa, do you want to come in about? Sorry, I'll come back to you. But you said you'd happily wash if it was for Spurs.
In this, I do wash regularly. I feel the need to out because that seemed very out there. I was like, sports washing. Look, I'm the only person there going, don't let the Qataris invest in United, not because I don't want United to, get the investment. I just need the money to be free and available to come our way, because we're okay with it. Come wash. We have no compulsions down there. We're happy. We will take the money. I think the thing is, you made a very important point there, and we had this discussion so much around the World Cup, where it became a question of the fact that we are determining the level of oversight or the level of investigation we will do on what someone's intentions, motives, etc. in becoming an owner of a football club or investing money in football clubs or tournaments is we look at their skin colour as the first port of call on how far does the Daily Mail want to dive into their motives. And I think that is a huge point, and it's very, very important. I think there is a willingness to overlook certain things, definitely. The reality is, we all know that, as Andrew rightly pointed out, if it comes down to a question of who will go to the highest level, the deeper pockets are the deeper pockets, and that's the reality of it. But I also think there's almost a level of, I'm not going to say ignorance, because ignorance is the wrong word, but it's that level of delusion, perhaps, about football fans, that they seem to think that when you're running a business, someone is going to go, oh, I'm selling my business, because that is what it is. Am I going to sell it to the person who's going to do the best thing for a business I will no longer have an interest in because I am divesting myself of my business? Or am I going to go, well, you know what, I'm going to get less money, but it would be good for the football club that I have already spent the last decade stripping the assets out of. But hold on, now's my moment where I'm going to be like, no, guys, I want you to have the best possible.
Now I want to get the fans on side when I'm leaving. Exactly.
Paul,
like, it's just...
Paul, I've asked you on this, and we discussed this last week, of course, with Portsmouth. You guys had your dodgy owners. You had no, and I can't. Some of them weren't even dodgy, but just there were so many issues around the club. What's your take on this? Because you've been through the mill.
Yeah, I mean, we had some owners that weren't even real people. So be careful. Buyer beware. Listen, very similar to kind of Newcastle United. I think Manchester United fans will kind of want anybody whose surname isn't Glazer. Kind of in the end, I think Jim Ratcliffe's bid is probably, for multiple reasons, probably the more palatable for the Manchester United fans kind of living in Manchester. Apparently they have 1 billion fans worldwide, so I'm sure the majority of them won't care and would be happy for kind of the Qatari team to take over. What are my thoughts on it? Be careful what you wish for. Nobody knows the true motives kind of behind any of these the bids. Jim Ratcliffe, you don't become like a self-made billionaire without making a few enemies along the way. I'm sure all of his business practices, as we have heard kind of in the last 20 minutes, aren't all rainbow and sunshine. I think it's kind of between the devil and the deep blue sea, maybe.
That is it. I mean, Andrew, again, I brought up the issue of this institutional kind of like those Johnny foreigners, and that's coming to the fore. The anti American had come on the back of anti-Irish. When the part owners of the club fell out with the manager of the club at the time, suddenly there were banners up like Irish out and so on. I mean, while the captain was Roy Keane. So there is this mania, but it is like, be careful what you wish for, because Ratcliffe, the rat, he brings an awful lot of baggage with him, and again, within 5 years, the club's gone.
Well, it's a very, very good point to make, and a point that has not been made by most media that most of us will have read all weekend. The most negative thing I've read, reported by, I believe it was the BBC article, I saw Dan Roan mention, well, on the negative side, Jim Ratcliffe has been a proponent of fracking. That was about the worst thing I saw reported. And not everybody is entirely against fracking. I mean, look, that's an issue that is, it sounds awful, but look, what level of importance do we give each issue? If we moralize over every single part of every single person's character, we'll never get to the actual sport itself. I mean, look, I care about the future of my football club fairly obviously, like everybody does. And if I'm being brutally honest, the Qatari bid would be far healthier for our football club. And I'm not talking about the moral health, the image, which will be a distraction. This is why I did actually say earlier on, I probably would be more comfortable with the Jim Ratcliffe bid, simply because it might be slightly easier. But then, like Paul said, be careful what you wish for. Look, there's major negatives to both bidders winning. The sports washing angle is true. Of course it is true. There's no point trying to pretend otherwise. We saw the Qataris during the World Cup say, look, we need to make more of an impact beyond the World Cup in itself. If we do nothing more to expand beyond it, use it as a springboard, it's been a waste of time. I'm going around in circles here. I can talk myself in and out of which bid I prefer. Quite frankly, I'm just willing to see what happens if the Qataris win the bid, which I'm certain they will do. Look, the football club will be healthy. The name will be dragged through the mud a little, probably quite a lot. But look, this is the world we live in. I'm sorry, but it is. Look, okay, just one last little thing I will say. Find me a bidder or an owner who is perfectly morally clean and also has the best interests of the club. Doesn't exist.
Issa would have said Ryan Reynolds and the other guy, but I have questions about that as well. Look, again, I think that no matter what, United fans, and they are. Andrew, we mentioned this earlier on. We just saw it start. I think on Friday, United are by far the biggest football club in the world. They are. They have the biggest brand. I mean, I'm communicating with people in India, and they're like, I'm a lifelong United fan. They've been fans since the late 80s, early 90s, but that has been handed down to them, especially in areas where there's a lot of contact with British people. I can tell you down in Malta, for example, you have Manchester United and you have Liverpool. You have Juve and you have, I think it's AC Milan. But that's again, Malta because of the contact with Italy and with England, but they are the clubs. You have a huge Man United fans club in Malta. The numbers in thousands, and they will literally be killing each other because I remember one guy was from our club, Floriana, another guy was from Sliema, who's kind of our local rival, rivals. At matches, they will be ready to go at each other, but then they go to the pub that they always, I forget what it's called in Malta, and they'll sit there drinking, watching United matches, hugging each other. So let's just put it like that. No matter what, United are still the biggest club in the world. They are going to sell everywhere, and it's huge for them. Paul, looking at this, we did bring up the whole the racism element. Are we over-egging it? Is that there with the coverage of it as kind of like, oh, well, we'd rather some guy who's a tax exile in Monaco than some rich fella from America or especially from Qatar?
Well, I think it also depends kind of what publications you read and kind of what websites you get your news from. Listen, personally, Man United, I don't think Man United fans will care as long as the name isn't Glazer. They will take anybody who they think, rightly or wrongly, will invest money in their club. As Andrew says, kind of the stadium's in a bit of disrepair, and he'll put a few quid into Eric Ten Hag's transfer kitty. It's quite difficult as a Portsmouth fan. We would have, a few years ago. Well, I'll tell you probably are some Pompey fans now, and I guarantee you, more than half would take anybody with a dubious background from any country if it meant that we would be in the Premier League in the next 5 years. I can guarantee most of our fan base would take that.
Same. We see the same. Liverpool are going through the same thing with the Fenway Sports Group. And I said it before, and I said it with United as well. If ISIS rocked up in the morning and said, listen, we're going to put 10 billion into the club, but we're going to have executions at half time, you'd have fans sharpening the swords to go carry out the beheadings, because we're going to get 10 million, we're going to win. Now, I'm exaggerating, of course, but as I said, fans don't care. Isan, you did mention, sorry, in the chat, that the team are performing extremely well at the moment. I mean, they're not distracted, and that goes down to the manager, of course.
It does, and I think it also reminded me of, not only did it remind me of it, but unfortunately, thanks for reminding me that it's the depths of winter when I see myself like a different human during the summer months when I'm actually getting vitamin D. Thanks for that video. Good times, as I'm like, I look sickly now. However, it did remind me that when we went through Chelsea's transition of owner and Todd coming in, there was also the drama with Tuchel. Everything felt like it was in disarray because they'd come from a situation where it was complete chaos. Obviously with everything that had gone on at the end of the Abramovich era, and the sale, and it just, everything was just so up in the air for Chelsea, and it felt like it translated onto the field very clearly, and what was going on in the back room in a director sense was also coming into what was going on in the back room in a managerial and coaching sense. Whereas Thomas Tuchel, it kind of feels a bit like he doesn't care what's happening. Like, he obviously does care because it's going to impact the budget, as Paul rightly put, into what's going into his kitty, into future spending. But it feels very much like this is his team. His focus is the team. The team are going to perform well. That not only is a good thing for United fans, but it makes them a much more attractive proposition, because they're already the biggest club globally in terms of like Man United as a brand and an entity. But if they're also playing good football for change, it's even better. And I think it's a really good sign of Thomas Tuchel, of Ten Hag, that you're not seeing that show on the field. And it is a good measure of him. And I think that's important for fans to kind of also take the second here and go, okay, we're trying to get rid of the Glazers. Look at how other managers have performed with the Glazers in the background. And then look at this guy who, when they're trying to get them out, how he's still keeping that team ticking along. And it's just, it feels like Man United are in a transition period where they're going in the right direction on all fronts. And that's a little bit worrying and upsetting for the rest of us. So, take some time.
Let's put it this way: they're now third in the league. They're only 2 or 3 points off City in second, and 5 off Arsenal first. Spurs, of course, up beating West Ham today 2-0, or yesterday 2-0, and they're up at the fourth place
Today. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's good. One thing as well with the Glazers, I mean, they remember it wasn't that long ago that United fans were singing the praises of Red Bull Ralph, and they were delighted to get Ralph Rangnick in. And, he picked Ten Hag. His people are still in United, even though they got Rangnick out. His people are still United. Ten Hag is his client. So there's this madness that people are going, oh, it's good. I do think Ten Hag, I was not skeptical, but I had no really opinion on it, but I didn't think he had it in it to make it at that level. I will say, and Andrew, I'll play this just especially for you. This is the kind of person that I can guarantee if Ratcliffe comes in, this is who he's going to bring with him. Trust me on this. This is who he's going to bring with him. And it's an interesting little, how should we say, vignette. Just a minute and a bit, and then he still can run away and enjoy the rest of our evening and rub zinc on the dog's paws. But just one more, you'll enjoy this now for a moment. And this is someone who the Rat will bring with him. So just enjoy this moment.
All of the things to get to a level of performance about consistency of good practice, doing the basics, the fundamentals in sport, doing them brilliantly, and that's going to get you a long way there. And then there's a little bit on top, which are going to make the real difference between the performance, high performance, if you like, and excellence. And it's a mixture of those. You can't do one without the other. But I like that, and I see that in when I look at Ineos and how Jim, admire the pioneering kind of spirit and the determination, and no's not an option. I think I'll learn a lot from that. But also, I'm also challenged by the fact that I think Jim's probably fitter than I am in a minute. And he rode around. You did the
age adjusted.
Did the Mallorca challenge at the weekend, which I did last year. Didn't manage to do it this year. So I think my challenge is going to be to stay as fit as I can and make sure I get my running shoes and cycling shoes on to keep up.
By me.
To keep up, yeah.
We have a number of words which we use to try and describe Ineos, and 3 of those would be grit, rigour, which is my favourite word in business, because you're not successful in business by accident. You have to be rigorous and detailed in your work and your analysis, and humour, because you're only on this planet once. You've got to enjoy it. And I think the 3 words apply to Dave and his organisation as well as it does to myself and Ineos. There has to be chemistry, otherwise, it's not going to work. So.
There has to be chemistry, or else it's not going to work.
Chemistry going on in the background there, all right.
No, yeah, chemistry, great choice.
Now,
Wasn't it? Yeah.
again, I'll say that was, after the watershed. So, Dave Brailsford, he got away with what he wanted to do, and he was making sure to suck up to the new boss. Of course, Dave Brailsford, the man who, and again, I thought that he was doing a great job, even though I was being told by people involved in cycling, don't trust him, he's snake oil. He transformed British cycling from also cycled in Olympic Games and so on. They're always great pros, very good pros who did well at different levels from Britain, but not like, massive tour winners. Suddenly he transformed British cycling, then set up his own team, Team Sky. Of course, we know who looked after Sky, and then got into bed with Ineos when Sky pulled out after a litany of scandals involving British cycling and, of course, Team Sky, when they had people who were doping and they had doping doctors. Of course, we know the brilliant Dr. Freeman case where he, had lost one laptop, got another one destroyed. Then he destroyed one with a screwdriver in case some, as he said, an Indian teenager would hack into his computer, even though he said it wasn't internet enabled.
Hardy's agent with what happened to his technology.
I know, and of course they had the whole thing that they would never use any needles, and then of course they were showing yesterday they used needles. They would never employ anyone who'd been involved with doping. They employ people who are involved with doping because in cycling, to get to the top level, you need, as Dave Brailsford said, marginal gains. And again, he is correct. They said that they were getting better because they had nicer, softer pillows for their cyclists. I'm not joking that they were taking bigger poops. If they had like a half a kilo poop, it wasn't enough. They needed to have 750 grams or one kilo poops in order to be performing better on the bike. Again, people lap this up. Andrew, Andrew, ultimately, there's now another bidder, of course, the Elliott Wealth Management Group. They're huge people who own AC Milan, and so they're massive people from the States. Hand on heart, who would you prefer? Because of course Elon Musk is also tipped to be interested as well, but that's just, again, that's Elon. I don't think he has 2 fires to rub together to buy after Twitter. But who would you, hand on heart, want to come in? Of the 3, of the Elliott Group, of Ratcliffe, or the fake shake?
I really honestly don't know, but if I really have to say one, I guess I would have to say the Qatar Group. I mean, look, there's already been plenty of links Manchester United have had with very dubious characters, as a lot of, well, virtually all major clubs probably do. And I know that's a real awful thing to say. Well, everybody's doing it, so everybody's in bed with somebody dirty. Well, it is true. What I hope would happen if the Qatari bid wins is human rights get an even brighter focus, because this is what I said about the Qatar World Cup. That was what I hoped would happen. Incidentally, in the last few months, how much have any of us read about human rights issues in Qatar? Who is really bothering about it anymore? I mean, virtually nobody. So I don't hold up much hope that the spotlight would be shone on the issues that do need to be addressed. But okay, yeah, I guess I've changed my mind. I said earlier Jim Ratcliffe, but I realised that it could potentially ruin my football club. Now, am I caring more about my football club than morals? Possibly.
Listen, when it comes to sport, let's not kid ourselves. We want our teams to win, and if we went fully moral, for example, I would not want to watch the Tour de France anymore. I do watch it. I came back to watching it a few years ago because I enjoy the spectacle. I worry about watching rugby because of the hits and the brain damage and the bodily damage and what they're taking to get them out in the field and so on. But I still watch it because I enjoy it. Paul, same with NFL. We said, like, you know the risks and you have to take them. So I'm going to end up with you, but Paul. Sorry, that's really bad. I'm going to end up with you. Brian, have more to say about that. Paul, sorry, I'm sorry, it's late at night. Paul, for you on this, who would you see as being best for United of the three main bidders, the massively wealthy Elliott Group, the Qataris, or Mr. Ratcliffe?
That's a toughie, isn't it? I think that best for Manchester United would probably be the Qatari group. They have I think they have the deepest pockets. They will want to, like Manchester City, they won't be running the business for a business. They'll be running the club to win. It's a peacock showing its feathers. They want the more trophies, the biggest, the best, everything. So I think from a Manchester United point of view, fan point of view, it will be the Qatari bid.
Isel, you don't like watching Brailsford, and a lot of the people who had guests on the show who were involved with, like Uli, or so many people just detest him. You don't like him. Why? And who do you think is best for United?
Why do I not like him? I think he's a despicable human being. I think that summarizes it just about. And I think marginal gains is absolute marginal crap. But we won't work through my issues with Sir Dave and the other illustrious Knights of the Realm who join him as part of the former Team Sky efforts. But what I will say is, I think the Qatari bid, there's two reasons I think the Qatari bid will be the best for the club, not just the finances. When you mentioned and when you reminded me of Dave and Ineos, because I tried to blank Dave out of my thought process, I refuse to call him by his title. Not only, you can say about the moral side of Qatar, that's to do with the morals of your moral aspect is to do with the country. It's a cultural view that we hold from the Western world, but the morals of Ineos are a different type of morals that will directly impact the players and how they result in their performance, as opposed to the morals of the background of where the money comes from. It's a concern that actually makes me think the Qataris are better on a number of levels for Man United. And as Andrew said, if it makes us have that discussion again that we had for all of 5 minutes about the Saudis taking Newcastle, that we had for all of the 4 weeks of looking at the World Cup, if it brings it to the fore again, that we used to have, and I'm going to say it now, that we used to have about boxing going to Saudi Arabia, that we've now forgotten the moral aspect that we were all so hyped up about, because that's the reality. Sports washing works. The difference with Ineos is the fracking they do, obviously on a environmentally unfriendly basis, is similar to what they do to the teams and sports people they become involved with. It is what they do is unhealthy. It's not good for the image of any sport, and it has longer term effects on a club than getting money in from somewhere like Qatar will have in terms of the negative impact. That's my view. And we would also like some of that Qatari money. Any other sheiks out there who are like, oh, I might want to spend some money, come on down. I'll take you. Sorry, just.
Okay,
I would be that person who would be like, oh, ISIS are turning up at the door. Guys, hold on. I have to get my burqa. I am ready for the match. It's got a Spurs logo on the back. We're all cool. I will take your money, and I have no moral high ground, because I think we are so now, after listening to so much of what we talked about around the World Cup, we're on our moral high horse deciding what is good and bad morality. One thing I can tell you for sure is what Ineos do is bad morality for sports players who want to compete fairly.
But always, you mentioned as well, I don't think it was in the clip we showed earlier on, it's in the description of this show. You can click on the clip for a longer kind of like view of it, and also the interview with Brailsford and with Ratcliffe. Issa mentioned, Radiants have gotten in, of course, to the Southern Hemisphere, to New Zealand rugby, and we see what's going on with them as well. They're in an awful lot of places, and business practice, they make money, they do well. As I mentioned in the clip, that they do have investors that are strange. coming into the company, but still they do their business. But again, for the sport, I worry, and I do again. So long, I have great time for United. I remember going to United I think it was. They weren't playing at home. They weren't playing. It was a Saturday with no match day, and the place was full of tourists from all around the world buying merchandise, taking pictures, in love with the place. That's what Manchester United is. It's an institution. Hated, yes, because they were extremely successful for many, many years. Pity it, yeah, because as with every other club, they have peaks and troughs, but at the same time, as a brand, they are second to none. In soccer for sure. Very quick. Next week, of course, we'll be looking back at the rugby. Of course, Italy looking to derail Ireland's chariot. Wales looking to try and restart their Six Nations and beat England, and of course, France against Scotland in a potential Grand Slam decider on Sunday. So we're going to see what's going to happen with that. So I will just say thank you very much, Andrew Flunt. I'm sorry that we all picked on you and sort of changed your mind or presented a different case to you. So my apologies on that.
No, it sums up the issue, doesn't it? It is very, very hard to be very clear cut, and it isn't clear cut. But I enjoyed it, and I think people could do well with listening to our discussion, because they won't hear much of that as balanced, I think, in the media. So we've done a service to the public.
As Paul said, that it depends on the media you read and the media you watch, and it does make a big difference. Paul, thank you again for being on us this week. Terrific as always, and well done on influencing the result of the Super Bowl last week by picking the wrong team.
Well, I'll be happy to do it next year as well, so don't you worry.
Isa, Cody, thank you so much. I know we kept you on 18 minutes longer than we should have. Thank you so much, and have a terrific evening.
Keep Car checking in and just checking right back out now for the evening.
Very good. Go enjoy your burqa.
Thank you.